In the news this week, direct reply, AMA WA President Dr Andrew Miller responds to interview comments from WA's Chief Health Officer.
Should our borders open fully, the opposition fights back against the Premier's firm stance, while regional businesses are left to adapt.
Advocates call for a royal commission into child removal with a change.org petition. And
on Western Perspective, why ARIA Award-winning songwriter Kavisha Mazzella returns to Perth.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Learn and Sarah Smith.
Good evening. As WA's Chief Health Officer warned against the state's progress being undone if community safety measures aren't followed, AMA WA President Dr Andrew Miller responded in his only interview this week. He advised the best way forward is through the government and community being on board and focused on their own part while restrictions are easing. What's the working relationship like with the government, and what are the concerns that are yet to be raised?
Well, our working relationship with the government is very good. We have regular meetings with the Health Minister. We're in regular contact with his advisors and with people in the Health Department about all sorts of topics that are ongoing, not just to do with COVID, of course. So in a democracy, of course, we will not always agree with the government or with the opposition, and often within our membership there'll be disagreement about the best way forward. But it's very important we have these discussions so that not only the medical profession but our patients and the community understand where it is that we're coming from. And we think that the input of the AMA early on was very important in getting the community and the government on board with the kind of restrictions we would need to control this disease.
The lifting of restrictions that cafes and restaurants have, are they working at the moment?
It's too early to say what's working and what's not. Everybody's jumping ahead a little bit. We've only just changed our restrictions a few days ago, and people are wanting to know what can we do next. It takes at least a couple of weeks to work out what effect this has on the disease and to see people coming forward. And we're getting more and more information all the time that this disease is not as predictable as we would like it to be. We're seeing historical cases pop up. We're seeing people who are being today tested positive in Queensland, having been overseas a couple of months ago, and now they're coming forward. So we still don't know what we're dealing with. It's too soon to say what the effect of easing the restrictions in cafes and so on will be, but we're hopeful if people do the right thing, they socially distance, keep up their hygiene, that we'll head in the right direction.
What's your view on WA's Chief Health Officer's calling for young people?
Well, I think that young people in our community actually get it pretty well. They might see this as being not necessarily applying to them, but they're also pretty well connected socially, and they're understanding what's happening internationally. They see what's going on in the UK and in the US. They don't want that to happen here. No one wants that to happen here. It could still happen here if we mess it up. I get the sense that politicians understand that their current popularity is because of low case numbers, and that's what helps me to sleep at night, because I know that everyone from the Prime Minister, the Premier on down understand that Australia doesn't want what's happening in the US and the UK. Now, we might have little arguments about the best way to keep case numbers low, but as long as that's what we're aiming for, we'll head in the right direction.
The New South Wales Premier is pushing for other states to lift their borders. Is that a dumb move from the main state?
Well, I can understand why they would want more tourism dollars coming into the state, and that's their position, but I think they need to respect that Western Australia is an isolated place. So therefore, not only do we have that advantage, we have the problems that come with isolation if you're trying to treat this disease in any sense. So we need to give it a good few weeks to see what's happening with easing our restrictions here. Then we need to give it a good few weeks to see if they can get rid of their community spread. But they've got community spread, we don't. We should keep the borders closed for as long as we need to.
With some of WA's intrastate borders reopening, regional businesses will benefit from an influx of local travellers. But will this be enough to survive on without further border restrictions being lifted and with international travel made redundant? Taylor Hanna spoke with one of the business owners in the southwest as the opposition argued that intrastate borders should be abolished immediately.
There's no doubt regional businesses have been severely affected during the current health crisis, but as we emerge out the other side, business is returning. Steve Jones, farmer at Sunflower Animal Farms in Margaret River, said their business was affected when they were forced to stop operating in early April.
It's about 50% of the people that came to us were from Singapore, Malaysia and China. So to lose that, that's going to change our whole business, the way we do things, how many staff and this sort of thing. So I can't wait for them to get back. I really miss them at the moment.
Mr Jones said they're confident they will survive despite the market changing, hoping that with international travel no longer being possible in the interim, people will consider exploring their own state and country.
They come on the weekends. You know, your Perth internationals is because they fill us up Monday to Friday. So it's going to be a huge loss when we're just taking weekend visitors, school holidays. We really need that consistency that Asia gives to us in tourism.
Now, I want Western Australians to be able to travel and support our regional tourism operators. They need a date so that they can take their businesses out of mothball.
While the Premier remains firm on the further opening of border restrictions here in WA, the demand from other state premiers and the opposition is increasing.
Every day we stay closed, more Western Australians lose their jobs and more families lose their livelihoods. So there is no hard border. There's been thousands of exemptions and yet still we have no community spread.
Taylor Hanna, WAMN News.
It's a wild and stormy evening tonight as a massive low-pressure system brings the wind and the rain into the Perth area.
The storm is producing high winds with coastal areas in the Pilbara and Wheatbelt experiencing very heavy rains. A low-pressure system interacting with a cold front is responsible for the wild weather, which is causing beach erosion and high swells throughout southwest coastal areas. DFS is reminding people to stay safe.
The worst of the weather is expected this evening, right through the night and into tomorrow morning. It's unlikely to significantly ease until Monday afternoon for Perth. Winds are expected to ease across the Pilbara and Gascoyne though overnight tonight and through the southwest later on Monday.
You know, regardless of age, everyone needs to heed our messages. You know, stay indoors, be sensible, stay out of the water.
And no parties tonight?
I would recommend no parties tonight.
Advocates have called for changes to the Child and Community Services Act with a petition calling for a royal commission into child removal in Australia. The National Suicide Prevention and Trauma Recovery Project says reforms for better Indigenous child placements and outcomes for children in state care has consequences, now affecting 60,000 children. They says the Change.org petition highlights the issue that is currently unprecedented as the highest rate in the world.
We have to stick up for our people. The rates have gone from 2,000 in 1997 when there was bringing them home reports. In 2008 there was the Kevin Rudd apology. There were over 8,000. Today 23,000. Now something's not working. What's this suggesting to me and to others is that there's systemic failures in that system.
WA's plumbing regulator is warning building occupants to be wary of potentially dangerous water contamination as they return to work. The regulator says that affected water may look or smell strange, but even clear water should be flushed after an extended period of disuse.
Over time, the pipes can produce corrosion, legionnaires and other bacteria which can be dangerous to health. Well, before you open for business, what you should do is you should flush all your pipes. So you do that by opening up all the outlets in your business.
A Trump-style Twitter stoush has erupted between prominent Perth property developer Nigel Satterley and Cottesloe Liberal MP David Honey. According to comments by Honey reported in The West, new red tape cutting legislation will not make any short-term differences to the state's economy. But Satterley disagreed, hitting out at the MP on Twitter.
Liberals should be about promoting confidence and jobs, not talking rubbish. To streamline and cut red and green tape is going to be very important.
But I will note that there need to be regulations drafted to support that legislation, and the best advice I have is that they're at least 12 months away. So there will be at least a 12-month lag before the bill can come into operation because the regulations need to be drafted.
US President Donald Trump has toured the Ford car manufacturing plant in Michigan, where it is diversified into producing medical equipment such as masks and ventilators. During his tour, he was wearing a face mask, but the president took it off before fronting the media. During an interview with CNN, the Michigan State Attorney General has expressed his extreme disappointment that Mr. Trump failed to wear a mask. Meanwhile, President Trump also warned China that the United States will respond strongly to any attempts to impose the state security legislation on Hong Kong. This comes following months of protest and political unrest in the city. China's Foreign Affairs spokesperson hit back, saying that the issues related to Hong Kong are China's internal issues and other countries do not have a right to intervene.
A recent study shows dogs really are man's best friend, especially during the coronavirus pandemic. The research highlights how loneliness, particularly in older people, can have serious negative physical and mental health impacts. The paper recommends using furry friends to keep in better health during these trying times. Pets are great social connectors, can help with mobility, and even be protective against depression.
And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website and social media pages.
No matter where you're watching, look after yourself, stay at home, and have a pleasant evening.
Take care.